what's going on, guys? Welcome to day 28 of the 10-year YouTube celebration. Yesterday on day 27, I had to do a very quick impromptu video again. It was me finally doing an idea I wanted to do for a while, where I quickly went through and where I showed all of you my vinyl collection. Did that really quickly. That was cool, but again, impromptu, so really short, not much to talk about with that. And on day 28, this one I was gonna try and put off until I could get with Tyson, but I'm almost thinking the two videos I wanted to do with him for the 10-year celebration just isn't gonna happen. So this one I'm gonna be talking about all of the different 3 Days Grace related videos that I've made here on the channel over the years. Now, again, I wanted to do this one with Tyson because, like, 3 Days Grace has been his favorite band for years, and they still are, whereas even for quite a while now, years and years, they haven't been my favorite band, and at this point, I don't really like the band anymore, you know? They're more of a band where, like, I don't know, I've got a weird, complicated history with them now, and, like, I really don't like them. I can easily go without listening to them, you know? So, yeah, that's why I wanted to do it with Tyson, because he would be a lot more positive and have a lot more things to say about them. Whereas, like, for me, like I said, I don't like the band anymore, to be honest. And even a lot of, like, that early material that I kind of clung on to for so long, I don't really like either, and I have a lot of issues with it. So, yeah, but my story with Days Grace starts back when I was a little kid, you know? Being born in the late 90s, you know, I grew up around 3 Days Grace, you know? And they were a super huge rock band, still are. And I remember, you know, right around the time that 1X came out, I remember hearing Riot and Never Too Late and Pain and All Might Become, and of course I Hate Everything About You. You know, their absolute biggest songs. And I remember, and funny enough, I've talked about this before, you know, at the time I remember thinking those songs were okay, but never really caring about them too much. And then eventually, I just forgot those songs existed, forgot the band existed, and stopped thinking about them entirely until I was in high school, when I was reintroduced to them as a band, which happened to coincide with another friend of Tyson's introducing him to the band for the first time. And then we kind of, like, bonded even more over 3 Days Grace. And that's where, like, we both started listening to, like, Human, which was the most recent release at the time. We started listening to that at the same time, getting into that together, while also revisiting everything that they had done beforehand, the first 4 albums with Adam in the band. And they quickly became, for both of us, our favorite band, you know? And of course, early on, we both loved 1X and thought that was, like, their best record, and that was the thing that we loved the most. And we have a lot of, like, good, really cool memories that I do still cherish because of 3 Days Grace, and particularly songs on, like, 1X and stuff like that. It was because of getting back into them, and then Tyson being introduced to them for the first time, I delved back and finally listened to, like, all of Self-Titled, something that I hadn't done, you know, ever at that point. And then Tyson would somehow, I don't know how, and this is part of why I also wanted him involved in this, but obviously, again, scheduling issues, as I've talked about before. But somehow Tyson would end up getting into something from Life Starts Now, probably Break, and then he would eventually actually, like, Life Starts Now, like, he would eventually tell me to listen to Last to Know, and then eventually I would listen to Last to Know, and then listen to the entirety of Life Starts Now. And it was funny, too, because, like, that was the one record I didn't even really knew existed, to be honest, at the time, because, like, I knew their early stuff, I knew Human, but, like, those last 2 Adam records, I didn't know anything about, obviously, because who would, if you only knew the early material and nothing else really. You come back sometime later, be like, oh hey, they have a new record, and you're like, huh, that's weird. That doesn't sound like Adam. Oh, it's not Adam. What the hell's going on here? And then you dive into that. But yeah, like if you were like me and like only knew the first two records before just never listening to them again until like years later, where you again got into a new record, which again for me was Human in this example, yeah, you wouldn't know, and I didn't know Transit of Venus or Life Starts Now existed. And eventually, yeah, Tyson would somehow, like I said, get into Life Starts Now, and I want to say this was when, again, my family was back down south. He had texted me one day, or we were doing like some sort of voice call or something, and he was just like, hey, you should listen to 3 Days Grace, Last to Know. Like I already said in the video, yeah. And I did. I loved it a lot, and I do still like that song. I do like the song a lot. And then, like I said, that ended up being my introduction to Life Starts Now. Listened to the entire thing, really liked it. I really latched on to specific songs. Like early on for me, obviously, Break, great. World So Cold was another one early on. I've always had a big soft spot for Lost in You, which is still my favorite song from the band. Last to Know was obviously a huge soft spot for me as well. Also, early on, I liked Good Life a lot. I don't really care about Good Life. I'm indifferent towards it. It's fine, but whatever. But yeah, eventually I listened to the record more and more and get into stuff like Someone Who Cared, the title track, and, Going Down, Without You, etc., etc. Get into the whole record. With, funny enough, I've talked about this before, Tyson and I both have, with one song being my absolute kryptonite on that record, opening track Bitter Taste. For whatever reason, I hated Bitter Taste. I could not listen to it. I really hated listening to it. And eventually I would get over that, and I don't know why I hated it. And I even talked about that on TGC Radio, the music channel, in the April album roundup video, where I ended up listening to all of 3 Days Grace's albums again, except for Transit of Venus, because, well, I had already listened to that last year. So I revisited Transit of Venus last year along with 1X. So for the purpose of that video specifically, I didn't do that. I didn't listen to either of those two. But yeah, that's where things started. But yeah, like, thanks to Tyson, TLDR, thanks to Tyson, I ended up getting to Life Starts Now. And then eventually, I would also listen to Transit of Venus, really get into that. And it was funny. So I would get into specific songs from Transit of Venus, like those, not really think about it too much. And then eventually I was just like, you know what? I'm going to sit down with the entirety of Transit of Venus. I did that. I didn't do anything else. I was just, like, enthralled by Transit of Venus. I wasn't looking at my phone. I wasn't writing a script. I wasn't taking notes at the time. Like, I wasn't doing anything else. I was just listening to Transit of Venus. And, like, I was enthralled. Like I just said, I loved it. I fell in love with that record. And it is still my favorite record from the band. Again, even if I don't really care for them anymore. I love that record. And then, obviously, by that point, I was gung-ho, like, full-fledged, like, they are my favorite band. I love them. And I was there for, right away, I was there for the release of The Mountain. Then the release of I'm an Outsider. Then the release of Right, Left, Wrong. Those pre-release singles for Outsider. And then I listened to Outsider immediately upon release, early March 2018. And, yeah. And eventually, as time would go on, as I've kind of already said before, I just would stop caring. I would start picking out things and noticing things about all their material with Adam and Matt, and like just throughout all the years, I would start, like I said, I would start noticing things, start picking out issues I had with their material, and I started noticing just like glaring flaws that I couldn't overlook, and it got to the point where, yeah, I just stopped caring. and I stopped considering them my favorite band, especially as I started really getting into more and more, and I started to really diversify my music taste. They just kind of became a band that kind of fell to the wayside a little bit, you know. And like, yeah, they'll always have a soft spot in my heart, but you know, I just couldn't do it anymore, and that's where I'm at now. Is like I've just kind of had enough of 3 Days Grace. I can't do it anymore. I just don't like them, especially as we got to a point now where like they're not experimenting in any way. They're not doing anything different. And now every single thing they release just feels the same. It just feels like, you know, been there, done that. And like, if that's what you want, that's totally cool. Enjoy it. Don't let anything I'm saying just like, don't let anything I'm saying like dissuade you from listening to it and enjoying it. Obviously. But yeah, like at this point, like I don't want music that just feels the same, you know? For the most part, like there are some exceptions to the rule. Like for me, I love Rise Against, and like I think personally Rise Against is basically the AC/DC of punk, where like you put on literally any 3 Days you put on literally any Rise Against record and you know exactly what you're getting into. But like that style just really works for me, so like them being again very similar on everything they release, like I said, it works for me. But like there were very few bands that there were very few bands that are like that I can listen to. You know, a lot of times with music, I don't mind if things are similar to what we had before, but I want something to actually feel different, you know? And again, 3 Days Grace, I feel like just hasn't been doing that. Also, I think genuinely Explosions is a big downgrade in quality. Like, genuinely, I thought Outsider was a solid record, and I still think it's a solid record, and was definitely like a step up from Human in a lot of ways. I've talked about it a lot before. But, you know, I like to use the analogy of, like, a fork in the road, a branching path a lot, but Explosions really does feel like a branching path to me. It feels like, you know, they brought Matt in the band, they made Human, and then there was two paths. They decided to go down the path that led to Outsider, but then as they went down that path, we're like but as they went down that path, and we got, again, what I think is a solid record, you know, it was all for naught, and like that path just ended up leading us back to where we were at. And then Explosion, where we were at, they put out Explosions, and we're back to the 3 Days Grace status quo. You know? And, yeah. And I don't know, that just didn't feel right. And, like, the thing is, again, like, even in, like, my review of the record in the April album roundup video over on TGC Radio, even in that, you know, I stand by what I said, and I still agree with it, you know. If you just like 3 Days Grace, there's no reason why you wouldn't like Explosions. There's no reason at all why you wouldn't, you know. It's just more of that typical 3 Days Grace sound with Matt in the band, you know? And if you like Human and you like Outsider, yeah, again, like, there's no reason why you wouldn't like Explosions. But for me, I was never a big fan of Human, and I've only grown to like it less as time has gone on. Even if I was a bit more positive in, again, the April album review of it, I've really only ever grown to like it less, like dislike it more as time has gone on, and you know, I don't care about Outsider as much as I used to, even if I do think it's the superior album with Matt in the band. And again, Explosions just feels to me like a serious, And with Explosions, yeah, it just feels like a serious lack of quality. It feels like a step down, like I already said. And that's just where I'm at, you know? That's a very brief version of my history with 3 Days Grace. I don't have much else to say. I don't want to keep this going, you know? They were a band that I used to love. Even a lot of the Matt stuff, you know, I did like quite a bit. But they're a band I used to love, that I kind of fell in love with when I started high school, after having known about them and being into a few songs when I was a kid. They became my favorite band, and I just gradually fell out of love with the band, and now I just don't care. That's where I'm at. That's, like I said, a brief look at my history with 3 Days Grace. Well, as brief as 17 minutes can be, but, you know. That's all I got. That was day 28 of the 10-year YouTube celebration. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you join me for day 29 with whatever that happens to be. And until next time, I'll see you later. Bye, guys.